If you look at the amount of people that come over on small boats, only 48% of them have been granted asylum. 52% are refused.
Immigration has divided the nation.
Now one of the first migrants to be deported to France.
And without it, the NHS would fail.
You have to pay £41,000.
Yeah, there is a lot of people who are uncertain of the future in this country.
How does that solve the problem? Before we get into today's topics, please make sure you hit subscribe or follow and make sure you turn on the double notification bell so you don't miss any future episodes. It's free and it's a massive help to the channel. We hope you enjoy. Now let's get on with the show. Welcome to another episode of Is That Legal? I'm Paul Britton from Britton & Time Solicitors. I've been representing clients in this town for over 10 years. And I'm joined today by an immigration expert, an immigration solicitor, Mitchell Potter. Welcome, Mitchell.
Hi, Paul. Thanks for having me.
This is an interesting topic, isn't it?
It is very, very topical at the moment. It's in the news pretty much daily.
And there's lots of things to cover. So we can talk about asylum, immigration, the ID cards. How are you finding at the moment immigration applications? Is it keeping you busy?
So following the recent changes, it's been a bit hit and miss. There is still applications coming through, but there is a lot of people who are uncertain of the future in this country and whether they want to make the UK their home. So we are seeing a downturn at the moment.
So you're seeing fewer applications?
Fewer applications.
But for what? Not asylum, for
no.
skilled work?
When we talk about asylum, that is something completely separate that has its own considerations, okay? So putting that aside, you have work visas, study visas, family visas, those sort of Ukrainian relocation schemes, Afghan relocation, they all come under what's known as the immigration rules. Asylum comes outside of that. They don't really fit inside there is an appendix for asylum, but it sits in its own sort of framework.
And do you deal with asylum, or is it just immigration?
We do asylum. Unfortunately, we don't do legal aid, so we don't see many of them because we don't have a legal aid contract, but we do still do them, and we keep across what's going on to make sure that
it's privately funded asylum cases.
Yes. And
so you say there's been a downturn. So are you seeing fewer applications for what do we call skilled work visas?
Yes, yeah. So if we have a look at the statistics, 2023, so following Brexit, we were at about 650,000 work visas granted in the previous 12 months up to June 23. As of June 25, we are about 281,000. So we've seen, a 48% decrease across the board over the years.
And what do you think the main driver of that reduction is?
So it's the increase of the rules, basically. So the thresholds that we have to prove when we're applying. So say you were working as a doctor and you wanted to come over and be a brain surgeon in the NHS, okay? First things I'd ask you is, do you have a degree? And what's your salary? The two reasons we ask that is because you have what's known as the RQF level. So for those who don't know, the RQF level is effectively the standard of qualification that you have. So RQF level 3 is A level in this country, and RQF level 6 is an undergraduate degree or higher. So effectively, in order to qualify now, you have to have an RQF level 6 qualification. So that's degree or equivalent. You can do it through BTECs or something like that, but more often than not, it's undergraduates. And you have to earn a minimum salary of 41,700.
So because there's fewer candidates internationally with degree level qualifications, it therefore follows there's fewer people able to apply for immigration status on the skilled work visa in this country.
Yeah, I think it's a combination of both that and the increase in the salary. Okay. So employers in this country don't see the financial benefit from hiring overseas anymore. Because, on top of the 41,700 that you're paying, you also have the immigration skills charge, which the employer has to pay.
What's the 40? What was that? 40?
So £41,700 is the minimum salary that you have to earn.
You have to pay someone on a skilled work visa £41,000.
Or their going rates for their particular job.
Which you then have to justify.
Depending which is higher.
Whichever's higher. Yep. Okay. And so that's made it less price competitive to recruit in. So what are employers doing?
Well, the aim of the government effectively is to train those in the UK to fill these gaps in the workforce.
But for businesses now who can't afford to pay £41,000 a year, where are they going for their skills?
They're not. The jobs are sitting vacant. Is my view, or they're hiring at a lower level.
Could they be outsourcing them to other countries where it's cheaper?
Potentially, yes. So you could be sort of doing a contract basis. So if a company has hired all these skilled people, they're paying above and beyond to get those in for a short period of time, rather than committing to 5 years of paying that, and all the visa fees that go alongside it. So there's different ways that it benefits them and doesn't benefit them. But ultimately, they're probably outsourcing to the likes of India, China.
So when people who criticise immigration say something like immigrants are taking our jobs, now they're not taking our jobs because no one can afford to employ them here, but instead they're not even immigrants, they're just taking our jobs from afar.
Effectively, yes.
Yeah.
Immigration is not the problem, it's the solution.
Yeah. So until, of course, the government looks to upskill the current workforce.
Yeah.
The current workforce or those not in the workforce?
I think the idea is that the mixture of both. So there is about 1.4 million people, I believe, who are currently on job seekers allowance in the UK. So the idea is to train those up to do what the government calls low skilled or medium skilled jobs. So they were the ones at RQF level 3 and below, to fill those gaps, which then frees up more money for companies to basically help bring in the skilled workers at RQF level 6. The ultimate goal is to obviously get more people through degrees, to go to university, and society as a whole is definitely shifting towards that. So ultimately, that is the goal that we're getting here, is to basically keep it within the country rather than going outside of the country to bring people in to do our jobs.
We don't see many headlines in the tabloids about upskilling the workforce or courses that are available for people on job seekers allowance, do we?
No.
I mean, what do you think about the tabloids and how they portray immigration as a whole in this country?
The tabloids focus on one part of the immigration system, and it tends to be negative. They don't see the positive that it brings. They don't see the level of taxes that immigrants pay. They don't see the contribution to the NHS that they have to pay. They don't look at it as a whole. They just focus on one thing that is pandering towards, the far right at the moment.
What's the one thing you'd say they focus on then?
They look at the small boats. That's the main thing. Everyone who comes over on a small boat is immigrations as a whole and immigrants as a whole. They're all put into one sort of box, when actually there is multiple different boxes that they all fit into.
I think sometimes it's the apple that spoilt the cart, and I mean, you may have a boat of 80 people that come over. If there's one that's bad, then all of a sudden people are quick to jump to the whole boat was bad.
Exactly. And if you look at the amount of people that come over on small boats, only 48% of them have been granted asylum in this country. 52% are refused.
And what happens to them?
They're then deported.
Okay.
After they've exhausted their appeals and gone through the immigration sort of appeal system and the legal framework that's there to protect them.
One of the luxuries that we've always had in England in particular is that we've had the English Channel, so we've had this like natural wall. So boats are obviously a way of coming over, an easy way. Do you think that there should be more pressure on the French government, for example? Because they're obviously coming in through France. I mean, first of all, is it right to say that? Are they departing France on these boats, or are they coming from somewhere else?
So this is where Brexit gets slightly complicated. So there used to be something known as the Dublin Recast Agreement, which we left when we left the European Union. And effectively, the Dublin Recast Agreement came into force because migrants were going to the Republic of Ireland, claiming asylum, being refused, and then crossing the border into Northern Ireland and claiming again. So Dublin Recast effectively prevented those people doing that by saying, if you claim asylum in a safe country, you are that safe country's responsibility, not the one you next go to. When we left that, there is no obligation for us to return them to a safe country. Okay, so if they claim asylum in France and refuse and they get on a boat and come here, we have to assess their claim.
Okay.
We can't turn around and go, well, you've appealed in France, so
You've got
off
to
you
go back to France.
and then it's France's problem to deport. We don't have that sort of framework anymore and that security.
So wouldn't be a sensible thing for any incumbent government to do would be to renegotiate those same agreements with the countries that these double claimers were coming from?
It would, and Labour have recently come up with something similar, which is the one in, one out deal that you might have heard on the news.
Tell us about that one in one out.
There's not an awful lot about it at the minute, apart from the fact that if you've travelled through France, effectively we can give you back to France, but we have to take a number of asylum seekers that have not yet been processed in France. So hence the one in, one out. It doesn't quite work like that. You know, we don't just send one back and we get one back. We get a group and we send a group back. But effectively, we're saying...
So we might send 10 double applicants. They've had an application in France. They've failed. They might be in the appeal process. They've come to England. And then we would send 10 of those back. And the French would send us 10 who hadn't made an application for asylum yet.
Yes, correct.
How does that solve the problem?
So the idea
That's the same
is
thing.
we're between the nations, we're sharing resources and finances.
Well,
so
it's
we're
not. It's
we're
not, though,
not
is it? Because how
reassessing-
is it? It's 10 applicants that you'd have to assess if they came in. And just by virtue of sending them back, you'll get another 10. It's the same 10 applicants.
So under the way it currently works, those 10 applicants could claim in France. France spends the money assessing their claims.
But the British taxpayer hasn't spent that money.
No. But if they then get refused in France and cross the channel, at the minute we have to assess their claims.
10 of them, yeah. Let's just
so
use
again,
10.
spending taxpayers' money at that point.
But instead, we're
right?
going to send them to France, and like a prisoner exchange, we're going to take 10 that haven't made. But what's the benefit to us? There's still 10 applicants.
I wish I had the answer.
Well,
I don't like it as an
it makes
an agreement.
absolutely no sense whatsoever.
It doesn't. I see the premise behind it, and it's
Yeah.
meant to be a deterrent, I think. And there probably are some financial backwards and forwards that haven't
But
been
some people will say,
published.
well, it's actually just a pass, because if you get into France and you don't make an application, that's okay, because you'll be swapped with one in England, which is actually probably where you want to get to.
Yeah, potentially. But if also you don't make an application in France and get on a small boat anyway, we would have to assess the claim because we would be the first safe country that you claim in.
I mean, the biggest problem with the boats, is it not the fact that coming across the English Channel in a boat, in a small boat, is incredibly dangerous?
It is, and that's something that the government are trying to clamp down on. And I don't know if you've seen it, but the RNLI, for example, did a promo video recently of a small boat rescue. And it was all about the fact that they don't discriminate. People who are drowning deserve to be saved. They don't care.
Yeah, human life is a human life,
exactly.
and that's what the RNLI was set up to do.
That is the argument with it. And you've got to be in some serious danger and scared for your life to make that crossing.
But isn't the real problem in the system when it comes to asylum is that there is no legitimate way to come to the UK and claim asylum? So you can't be in France and claim for that. You have to be here.
Yep.
And in order to get here, you have to come by way on a visa if you're in international. Yep. And if you get refused your visa for work or study or whatever, you can't come. Therefore, you can't claim asylum.
Yep. So
do we not have to look at the legal framework about asylum more?
We do, and there used to be safe routes for claiming asylum, but they were taken away by the Tories.
What were the same route?
So you used to just be able to turn up at the border. So if you got on a plane...
But hang on, but in England, the only way to turn up at the border is by way of a boat.
Now, previously, you used to be able to get on a plane, turn up and say, I want to claim asylum.
But how would you get here? Because you couldn't travel unless you got a visa of some sort, even a visitor visa, a tourist.
You used, depending on what country you came from,
you
used to just be able to get a visitor visa and come over and claim, right?
Or what do you mean you used to be able to just get one?
So, visitor visas are slightly complicated, okay? So, if we go back just a fraction, illegal migration, which is what the news wants you to look at as a whole, is those who come here with legitimate means but have done so fraudulently or have broken the immigration rules. Asylum doesn't sit in that, and they're called irregular arrivals. So completely different framework. So if you take away the illegal side of it, because they're not technically illegal, they've just arrived irregularly, then you are allowed to claim asylum, basically, right? So that technically is entering the country illegally because you don't have entry clearance, which is where it gets confusing, okay?
Because the only way to do that surely is by way of a vote.
At the moment, yes.
But under the previous governments,
So it was the Tories that brought that
yeah.
in 2022 with the Illegal Migration Act and the Nationality Security
What did they
Bill.
bring in particular?
So they took away the ability to basically apply for a visa and then come because they would deem you as illegally entering the country. So, you know, the ideal solution here, Paul, would be to have processing centres outside of the country that you could go to safely and claim, right? So we know, for example, Gaza at the moment is somewhere that people are, you know, likely to claim asylum from because of the state of the country. If the UK government saw that as a risk, we could, in theory, set up somewhere in Jordan, just across the border, that they could go and claim asylum and be processed in Jordan. And they're looking at something similar at the moment in Romania, I think it is, where they're looking to basically, Romania will hold them at our expense in sort of camps and detention centres there, where they can claim asylum and be processed in Romania. If they're refused, they're then sent back from Romania rather than being in this country.
And do you think that's something that the British taxpayer will be happy to pay for?
I don't think they'll be happy to, but I think we have an obligation to. Ultimately, we are the nation that set up the Refugee Convention. We are the nation that set up the European Convention of Human Rights following the atrocities of World War II. We were the founding nation alongside the Allied nations.
But a lot of the electorate at the moment, you know, there's talk that there's going to be a massive shift in government and immigration is the big driving force. So if the public aren't happy with that setup, any government that proposes it or incoming government or a political party surely just aren't going to get into power.
But so those people that currently are pushing the government to switch its views, I asked, do you enjoy the NHS? And if the answer to that is yes, if you took away migration...
I'm not sure any of them said they enjoy the NHS.
No, but
they,
do you
they
enjoy
probably like the idea of it, yeah.
Do you enjoy the services the NHS provides?
Yeah.
When you go down to your GP,
Yeah.
do you speak to somebody who is British, and are they third generation British, or are they not? 40% of migrants, NHS workers even, are migrants. And without it, the NHS would fail. Something that we as a nation are so proud of. Our national health system cannot function without immigration.
But what's the British workforce that we could upskill into those roles? I mean, if they're now talking about that, but had they done that 20 years ago, we may not have a problem where you go to your, I mean, I'm not saying it's a problem, but when you go to your local GP, that they are of immigration status, they're not, you know, second generation, third generation British citizens.
I think ultimately it just comes down to current affairs in the NHS, right? You know, they used to do it. So when I was at university, graduated in 2018, nurses used to be able to go to uni for free. So they weren't paying the £9,000 fees. It was subsidised by the government.
And now?
You pay £9,000, right? And then when you graduate, you get paid peanuts to do the job that you do. You're working 13, 14-hour shifts, 4 or 5 days a week, on a ward, in a hospital, and you get paid peanuts.
So it's like the left hand doesn't know what the right hand's doing.
Basically.
Before we continue this episode of Is That Legal, an announcement from our sponsor. This episode of Is That Legal is proudly sponsored by Oliver Lorenz Studios, your on-demand design team for B2B service providers. They're your dedicated design partner, delivering consistent, high-quality creative without the overhead of hiring in-house. Think bold branding, polished presentations, and visual content that actually moves the needle. Check them out at oliverlorenzstudio.com. Design support just when you need it. What's all the talk at the moment about ID cards? Like, how's that going to work? Because like, for me, whenever I hear the topic come up, you know, I instantly go to, well, I've got a passport and I've got a driving license. Like, what's the problem? Why do I need a third card? So what is so unique about this third card?
So the idea behind the digital ID cards is to put a stop to illegal migration and illegal work. So only those who are here legally, so be it a British citizen, settled or on a visa, are able to get a digital ID card. If you don't have one, the presumption is that you are here illegally, and therefore you would be investigated or potentially detained whilst that is investigated.
But there's a few things in there, like the ID card isn't a policeman, so it's not going to police anyone. So how is it going to stop illegal workers?
Effectively, the way I understand that it's going to work, from what we've been told, is if a policeman stops you on the street and asks to see your ID, you are requested to produce your digital ID card. If you can't, he would then effectively assume that you are illegal. Okay, whether you've got a passport or whether you've got a driver's license or not, that is the presumption, as I currently understand it. This might change.
But that's outrageous, because that flies in the face of, very ancient doctrine of you're innocent until proven guilty. In this case, because you can't produce a card, you're guilty until you can otherwise prove your innocence.
Basically, yes. Yeah.
And what if you pulled out your passport and the officer said, "Well, I'm not happy about your passport. It's got to be your ID card."
This is currently the debate at the moment.
Yeah.
If you produce a passport, and you can't produce your digital ID, in theory, they're allowed to challenge you on that.
I mean, I
don't agree with it, and I think it's a waste of money. And
when you say it's a waste of money, that's a really interesting point, because you're probably a little bit too young to remember this, but I remember in the 90s, under a government at the time, where they spent between 250 and 300 million just talking about introducing a digital ID bill, only for it all to be scrapped and all of that taxpayer money to be gone. So this is, for me, having seen that once before, this just feels like hopefully the British public are going to have forgotten about it and we'll have another go at it. But is my passport not digital? I mean, they say it's a biometric passport. What does that mean?
So a biometric passport effectively allows you, so every time you go to an e-gate, say you fly into Heathrow, you go to an e-gate and you put your passport in, you don't speak to a border force agent anymore. So effectively what happens is that camera scans your face and it basically analyzes that against the picture that you provided, and it analyzes it against every entry and exit that you've ever had through the country. It then determines whether you are who you say you are on your passport. It also scans, passports are quite clever. They have multiple different layers. So when you open it up and you look at your passport page, if you shine it under a UV light, it has patterns, it has the 4 flowers of the United Kingdom on it, and it's got a load of different security measures in there. So when you scan that passport, it's checking, is the passport real? Is the passport the owner of the person that has currently got the passport in their possession?
By linking the face to
by looking at the face and looking at it. That's the biometrics element of a passport. The digital visa statuses that have been rolled out since January 25 of this year have replaced what's known as the biometric residence permit. It used to be like a little driver's license card that used to show your immigration status and expiry. They've got rid of those and now done it digitally. So they are also now linked to your passport. Okay, so when you turn up at a border force agent and say, I'm here to enter the country, he just scans your passport and your visa status pops up automatically in front of him.
Handy.
With your face and your fingerprints, and he can verify that's who you say you are, and then we'll ask you questions on your purpose for visit. Is it work? Is it visiting, tourism, etc.? And then you're granted entry. So ultimately, we have a system that works.
Why can't they just upgrade the passports then? Why have a third document that you can lose? Why don't we just say, right, let's turn to the passport system and let's upgrade this to an ID?
The idea behind the digital ID is it's on your phone. So it's not a physical document, right? Hence why it's called a digital ID.
What sort of phone?
It would have to be a smartphone.
What if you don't have a smartphone?
Then you can't have a digital ID, and then you're presumed to be illegal.
Well, then the whole system fails because not everybody wants.
There's a lot of hiccups at the minute, and if you follow anything on sort of social media, you'll see that there's some sort of memes and reels going around of police officers stopping people and going, my phone's dead. So, here's my passport, here's my driver's license, here's my visa. oh no, you're still being arrested for being an illegal migrant.
I think
Just because your phone's dead.
when your smartphone dies, I think the wallet still works for a period of time, so you can still double tap on the side to pull up that document, even though it's dead.
Yeah, only if you can get to it in your Apple Wallet.
Yeah.
Because if you look at the COVID pass that you used to have, it never used to be in your Apple Wallet. It used to have open an app for it to be scanned. So if it's the same for security purposes, because the government love their three folds of security, you can't access it. So then you'd probably get a notice from the police, a bit like when you're driving. If you can't produce your driver's license, you're asked to produce that at a police station at a later date. You'd probably be told to do the same thing.
So what do you think is going to happen with all this ID cards?
I don't think it's going to happen.
Okay.
It's my personal view. I think...
Storm in a teacup.
Yeah, the government will spend a lot of money. They'll try and get it working. And then it will never come into force. It will never pass Parliament.
And then we'll move on.
And we'll move on and we'll just spend £300 million.
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I think that's what it'll be.
Because ultimately there is no way to police it.
There's been a massive outcry.
And it's wholly unfair.
I mean, there's a petition in circulation at the moment.
Oh, it's got 1.2 million, I think.
Well, I think last time it fell into my inbox, it was over 2.
Is it 2?
Yeah, I mean, I've not signed it. Everyone seems to be doing the job for me, but
yeah, I mean, ultimately, I don't think it's going to help.
No,
because they can check anyway.
Yeah. You briefly mentioned the ECHR, which is the European Court of Human Rights, which originally, back in the day, had 47 country signatures to it. Obviously, Russia was expelled from that, so we're down to 46 now. What do you think the future of the European Court of Human Rights is going to be?
It's a very sort of political question, Paul. There is no right or wrong answer to this. However, do you like to have running water in your house?
So my human right to having running water.
Yeah.
But Mitch, I know what you're going to say.
And a fair trial.
I know what you're going to say. But before the ECHR, there was running water into the homes of British citizens. And when you talk about justice, the justice system was also well in place before the form. So when people make those sort of comments, they're scaremongering, right? So I don't take that as a valid point. But yes, absolutely. Just to answer your question so you can continue, I love having running water, even if it's overly chlorinated. And 2, I love the right to a fair trial. Not that I've ever had to use that right, but it's nice to have it there if I ever do.
And what you have to look at, so the ECHR, so you've got the European Court of Human Rights, ECHR, and you've also got the European Convention of Human Rights, ECHR, right? The European Convention was brought in to basically stop the atrocities of World War II. So the Holocaust, persecution of one particular sort of person or peoples, that's what it was brought in to prevent. Okay, so all of these nations signed up and said, we can't allow what happened in Europe during the 1940s to happen again. So we will sign up to basically a convention that allows those people to sue governments and appeal to an independent court that sits outside of those nations to determine whether that is a breach of their human rights or not. That's what the ECHR does, okay? In the sort of news at the minute, Nigel Farage, Reform, they're looking to leave the ECHR, even though we were the founding nation of it. Because in their view, any immigrant and any asylum seeker who comes to the UK and is refused can appeal to the European Court of Human Rights, and the EU stops us.
Not the EU. We've got to be careful there. It's the European Court of Human Rights.
So this is the way that they frame it.
Yeah.
The EU stops us. Okay? But they're two independent things.
Yeah.
The EU bloc
separate,
has nothing to do with the European Court of Human Rights.
No, because there's 27 members of the European Union, and there are 46 signatories to the Euro, so they're quite distinctively different.
Exactly. And, there was a powerful statistic that came out recently following an Oxford study. Since 1980, the UK has only ever lost 13 deportation cases. Since 1980, okay? 4 of those related to what's known as Article 8, the right to family and private life. That's
But what someone on the other, I'm just playing devil's advocate here, would say is how many of those does the ECHR have to make before it becomes wrong? What number in your head would be wrong to have forced us to have taken back when our courts, the courts of this land, have said, no, sorry, you got to go? Is 1 being sent back bad enough? 10, 100? Would it have to be would we have to accept back 100,000 for you to say, okay, it's being silly?
I think
The highest court of this land has said, no, you can't stay.
yeah, and again, I think it's difficult because it's a case by case basis. Okay, so without looking at the facts of those 13 cases, how do I know? It's a bit like, if somebody appeals to the Court of Appeal, on the face of it, you could say what they're appealing. When you start getting into the facts of that case, you think, oh, well, actually, they've got a case here.
But to get to the ECHR, they have exhausted their legal routes in this country.
The whole idea of the ECHR effectively is to protect those human rights. So what an individual can do is say, yes, I've appealed to the Court of Appeal, but I still don't think that they have taken into consideration the human rights element of this application when making their consideration here. Okay, so then they can appeal to the ECHR. You don't automatically get the right to appeal. You have to apply for permission. If they say there's a case to be heard here, then they'll hear it, same as the Court of Appeal.
But the decision about whether the case should be heard at the ECHR is made by the ECHR. So it's taken out of, this country should have sovereignty over its laws and its rules. And if the highest court in this land has said no, we then have to succumb to another layer of judicial system where we can't say you have permission to appeal. Outside of the jurisdiction, a court, judges will sit there and say...
But that's the whole purpose of the ECHR. The whole reason it was created is to have an independent voice to say that what you're doing is illegal or legal. Okay? The ECHR doesn't say immigration policy in this country.
No.
That is our sort of purview to do what we want. And it doesn't do that for any nation that signs up to the ECHR. Okay? And only, in the last 45 years, the ECHR, it's the European Court of Human Rights, has only ruled that our immigration rules were a breach of the European Convention of Human Rights 3 times. Okay, I don't know what those 3 rules were, but we had to change them because they breached that. Okay, so there is not any overreach here. It's serving the purpose that we, as a nation, set it up for. And the 46 signatories set it up for, which is to be independent of government and the judiciary of that country to protect those individuals.
But the public have trust in the judicial system here. Why do we need... And I understand why it was all set up, but time has moved on. And in the 2 wars that we talked about, England wasn't the aggressor. So frankly, we've got nothing to answer to. We've always been okay. Why is our judicial system, why do we need a third-party intervention when the public trusts the judicial system here? There is faith in justice. And actually the only issue arises for the public is when it leaves our jurisdiction and we allow a third party.
I understand. The idea is to take away any judicial bias that there might be. Okay, so any government pressure on the judiciary, any sort of unconscious bias. The idea is that there is an independent party to assess solely on whether it's a breach of human rights or not. Okay, because in UK law, what's a breach of human rights might not be what's a breach of the European Convention as a whole. So, you have to look at the elements slightly differently. And I agree with the points you've made. Why have it? But I think it is there to protect, and I think it's overused. And that partly is lawyers using it as a safety net rather than accepting a case as a whole.
But what someone will be doing right now is screaming down their screen, saying, to protect who? Because a British citizen is never going to rely on it. It can only be
a British
someone.
Citizen has.
Go on then.
So if you were detained in custody, for example, and you were unlawfully detained, and you sued the police for unlawful detention, that case was thrown out.
But we are talking
You
about
could appeal to the ECHR.
immigration.
Yeah.
I mean, there was also a problem when they wanted to give the prisoners the right to vote.
Yes.
And the ECHR said you have to give your inmates a right to vote, which was morally, is that right or wrong? They've given up their civil liberties. They've committed a crime against society. They're incarcerated for a reason. Should they be allowed to have any influence over politics or who governs this country? Question mark. But in terms of an immigration case where someone has come to this country, those 13 that have come to this country, how many of them were second, third generation British citizens?
Well, probably none.
None.
'Cause they're appealing something.
So
But
when
if-
the
if
argument
you-
is made to the British people, you know, it's to protect. They're saying, well, not to protect me. They're just saying, not to protect me.
No, it's to protect humanity as a whole.
Okay.
That's the idea.
I think that is the leap that people struggle with
It is, and you know,
because we're only so big.
me included.
Yeah.
You get focused on details when actually you forget what the bigger picture is here, and that is to basically uphold us as humans to a higher standard to stop what happened happening in World War II. That's the idea behind human rights. It's the reason they were put on paper and everyone signed up to it.
But
The
like I said, we
reason-
weren't. If the British weren't the aggressors. So
No. But the idea is we were
it's
the,
almost a reason
we were
to
the
exit.
savior.
You lot could sign up to it because you were the aggressors,
Yeah.
but we don't need to because
Yeah, but the idea is that sort of as a nation, we were leading that. We were pushing for that, and we sort of didn't want that to happen again, where our country was under such strain of, you know, risk of invasion, change of way of life, and persecution across the board.
But did we not push it to regularize and to keep in check other nations? It was never intended to keep us in check.
Yeah, but you can't have your cake and eat it. You can't implement something on other nations and not sign up to it yourself.
You all sign up to this so you lot will behave.
Yeah, and we'll police it. It doesn't quite work like that because everyone will go, well, we're not going to sign up to it. So in order for those nations to sign up, we had to sign.
But now it causes us a problem when we fast forward.
I wouldn't say it causes us a problem. I think it's perceived incorrectly, and it's framed in a way where it causes us a problem.
But when political parties have ventilated this in the past, they do always say they'll bring in their own system, their own set of rules.
Yep.
So it's not the fact that we'll do what Russia did. We'll no longer be a signatory and we won't sign up to it. But instead, we will have our own infrastructure within the jurisdiction that will
But
look.
why waste money and time setting something up when we've already got it in place and it works?
It didn't work on those 13 occasions.
Yeah, but how do you know? We haven't read the facts of those 13 cases.
Well,
So
that will be
could have
another
been a
episode
breach.
of Is That Legal?
Yeah,
To
so
go
it
through the
could have
cases.
been a breach, in which case correctly they've stayed.
So what do you think will happen with the ECHR?
I think it's fear mongering. I think it's political grandstanding, and it's there to gain votes. We will stay.
I think we'll stay, but if the government does change at the next election, and depending on how it changes, I think there could be a serious threat to it as well.
I would agree with that.
But it depends. It depends on the mood of the nation at that general election.
But I think ultimately common sense will prevail. And
Still got to get it through Parliament.
Exactly. Hence why I think common sense will prevail, and it's got to pass the House of Lords as well. So, you know, leaving the ECHR is a bit like Brexit. Technically, it should go to the people.
That's what they did. That's what they did with Brexit.
But people would need to educate themselves on what it is.
Well, that's
first,
what they said about
and
Brexit.
And the sort of protections that the ECHR gives them in the day-to-day life.
Right, well, thank you for that, Mitchell. We've had a few questions come in, and I'm going to read a couple of those to you now. The first one comes from a distressed housewife. She says, I'm a British citizen, but my husband is from South Africa. We've been married for 4 years, and we're here on a spousal visa. We've done everything by the book, paid the fees, provided all of the evidence, but every renewal feels like we are being treated as if our marriage isn't real. Why does the Home Office make genuine families jump through so many hoops while illegal immigrants seem to get more attention, more sympathy from the media? Is the system actually fair to law-abiding families?
Yes, is the simple answer. You know, the same hoops that you're having to jump through, illegal immigrants are having to jump through, the same sort of burdens that they're having to prove. And effectively, the reason the Home Office asks you to extend your visa every 2.5 years is to prove that your marriage is still genuine. You are still in a relationship, because you'll be surprised how many people separate, but don't get to divorce, just for the purposes of keeping their visa. And that's not what the spousal visa was set up for. So ultimately, the Home Office like to check that you are still living together, you are still in a genuine relationship, and that you still meet the income requirements.
But surely it's not just having a marriage certificate enough?
No.
Or by virtue of not having a divorce?
No. So the immigration rules is that you have to be in a genuine and subsisting relationship. That's the rule you have to prove, not are you married. One way of proving that you have a genuine and subsisting relationship is through marriage and a marriage certificate. So if you have that, you've satisfied part of the rule. But every 2.5 years, the Home Office wants to check that that is still the case, because a lot can change in 2.5 years. Recently I had a client who was going through a separation with his wife. They're not living together. He's here on a spouse visa, and he wanted to know the implications on his indefinite leave to remain application. In theory, he doesn't get it, because they're no longer in a genuine and subsisting relationship.
So how long has he been here?
Together. 5 years.
And so what happens in his circumstances?
We're going to go ahead and argue it. That even though they are not living together, they're still in a relationship because they've still got children and they're still in each other's lives. So we're going to argue that on his instructions that he still meets that requirement.
And surely if he was deported, then, that's denying a family life, because what about the children? Do they not have a right to have a father in the country as well?
Yep. So they're both born in Britain.
Yeah.
They don't know anything other than being here. So they're not British citizens because they weren't born to settled parents or British citizens, so they don't get citizenship. But yes, part of our argument will be Article 8 and the fact that those children don't know anything other than the UK, and to remove their father would be wholly unjust.
How did the children get British citizenship then?
So they would get it alongside the parents. So once the parents become settled, they get settlement at the same time.
Okay.
Even though they've not been here for 5 years.
So just by virtue of being born here, you don't become a British citizen?
No, not anymore.
Okay. When did that change?
2023.
Oh, so relatively recently. So.
Recently, yeah.
Because I think there was a problem that people would come over and give birth here.
Yes. So
British
effectively,
birth certificate.
Effectively, that's what it was to stop. So in the US, for example, if you're born
tourism.
In the US, if you're born on a plane over US soil, automatically you're American.
In the States.
In the States.
Yeah.
That doesn't work here.
No.
It used to be like that. If you were born.
And their current government haven't got around to changing that.
They haven't. No. And I don't think it will change.
That surprises me. I thought there'd be an executive order by now.
Because it's getting citizenship is going to become harder, not easier.
Okay. Yeah, as it has here.
Yeah.
Okay. Next question. Okay, this one has said that they run a small restaurant in London and they employ a few overseas staff legally under sponsor licenses. Recently, one of the employees couldn't prove their right to work because the Home Office online system was down. We nearly got fined, even though they had legal status. If the government is forcing everyone to go digital, shouldn't it also take responsibility when the tech fails? Who carries the risk, the employer or the state?
The employer. So
if the system goes down,
yep,
and the employer can't check the status because the government system has gone down, it's the employer's fault.
The employer should do a right to work check at the point of employment. That right to work check should be printed.
But this is mid-employment. She's got 4 employees.
So you basically have, when the Home Office turns up as a sponsor license, you have to prove that you've done all of your duties under the SMS system.
Yeah.
One of those is regularly checking that your employee still has the right to work in this country.
Yeah.
So you should do it at the point of employment.
Yeah.
Print it out.
Yeah.
Sign, date it.
At a review.
Put it in a file.
Yeah.
So when the Home Office turn up and say, where's proof
You
of
say,
the
"Here
thing,
it
you go,
is."
here it is.
Yeah.
I've done it.
Yeah.
If they ask to see it on that particular day, and the digital system, you would have to get a share code.
Yeah.
You can then go on and see it. If that
But if
system's
it's down, yeah.
but you can prove that you did it, 6 months ago,
Okay.
then that's reasonable. Yeah,
Okay.
you've done your right to work check and you've continued to do so. But ultimately, the liability rests with the employer, not with the government.
So the trick is to check it every 6 months or so and print it out and sign it.
Yeah,
and keep
that's
it
what I always recommend to my
hard
clients
copy.
is regularly do checks. And if you're sponsoring workers over here, every time they change house,
Yeah.
you should update your SMS system, keep a record of their new address.
Yeah.
Every time they change passport, you should be getting a new copy of the passports. Every time they have a visa extension, you do it again. And you
Okay.
just keep doing it every single time.
But if you went on to check a periodic check, so the Home Office isn't knocking at your door, you do a periodic check and the system's down, and you can't satisfy yourself that they've still got permission to work, what are you meant to do? Sack them? Suspend them?
Suspend them.
Really?
Yeah.
On full pay?
No pay normally because you can't
Wow.
you can't pay an illegal worker. So you would normally suspend them without pay
Until the system comes up again?
in such times that you're happy that they do have the right to work in this country.
Drastic actions. Okay. Well, I mean, and what do you think about that?
I think it's the correct way of doing it because ultimately,
But I think if the government is going to impose a system, they ought to make sure it's working and working all the time and there's no downtime.
yeah, I mean, so
and
far,
if it's down, the employer should be given the benefit of the doubt.
yes, if they've done the checks correctly in the first place. So if you've done your right to work check at the point of employment and you've done it periodically throughout that employment, say you hire me,
Yeah.
right? I'm from South Africa.
Yeah.
I've got a visa to work here that you've paid for, by the way, because I'm coming over to work for your company.
Yeah.
You do the right to work check when I join. Okay, so I give you my share code, you download it, you print it, you put it in my personnel file with my passport, my address, my contract, everything else that you have to have per UK employment.
Yeah.
You do that again in 6 months.
But the system's down.
System's down.
I have
Fine.
to suspend you.
Fine. Right.
I have
So
to
you can
suspend you.
take a screenshot of the fact that the system's down.
And suspend
you wouldn't
you.
have to suspend me
Ah, okay.
because you've already done the right to work check and you know that my visa is valid
Yeah.
until 2.5 years
So I do
time.
a screenshot the system's down,
Yep.
print it,
Exactly.
add it to your file,
Exactly.
come back tomorrow.
You would then ask me if you still got a visa. Yes, I do. Okay.
Yeah.
Are you able to see it? Yes, I can. Here you go.
Yeah.
Take a screenshot of that. Put it in the file.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because your
If-
visa's on your phone.
Potentially, if we go down the digital route,
Right.
right? If the whole system's down and the Home Office turn up and you go, well, I've done my right to work check here and I did it 6 months ago.
Yeah.
And they go, well, 6 months is not soon enough. You go, well, of course it is. If it was 2 years, fair enough. I was not informed of a change. I'm doing my duties as bound by the sponsor license. It's not my fault. And you would make representations to say, I can't help it if your server system is down. And that's where we would step in if you are facing a fine, because they've now gone up to £63,000
Wow.
per illegal worker.
I'm surprised it's not per illegal worker per day.
Yeah, I mean the way it's going,
That would be overly
we'll get there.
punitive,
But effectively, if you hired 20 people and you're unable to prove their right to work, you're looking at like 1.2 million
So
pounds.
put you
in
out of
fees.
business, basically.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, shut the doors.
It's ridiculous amounts, and that's the idea behind it. Is it's a big deterrent.
But some people would be saying, don't recruit, people, recruit locally, recruit citizens.
And that's what the government is hoping will happen.
But I think a lot of people that say that, they don't realise that there's a skill shortage.
No.
It's all very well saying recruit locally, but if the skills aren't here, you actually have no choice but to go abroad or outsource it.
Yeah. So since the immigration white paper in May.
So when I say outsource it, I
25,
don't mean outsource it to a UK-based company. I mean outsource it to a foreign.
Yeah. So just on your skill shortage point, I'm sidetracking a bit here, but since May 25, when they released the white paper and they reduced the shortage occupation list, as it was once known, and it's now the temporary shortage list, they've added 92 jobs to that this month.
Okay.
That sort of proves how big the shortage is.
I'm going to have a look at those. I remember I had a friend once who went to Australia. He was a hairdresser and he was like 18. And he was going, and I said to him, "Are you going to come back?" He said, "Yes." He never came back.
No.
And that was, 25 years ago now?
Yep. And I mean, Australia are very good.
Well, as a hairdresser,
Yeah.
because it was on their shortage list.
Yeah.
They
And
needed
and
hairdressers.
They, as a nation, as a government, are very good at incentivizing people to come in those shortage occupations. So they pay higher salaries. They normally get government subsidies and everything. So they are very, very good at addressing their shortage.
I think I'll be having a look at this list of 91 skill shortages when I get back to the office. We'll see what's on there. See if solicitors on their immigration.
Unfortunately, it's not.
It's not on there. Okay.
Well, if you know any auto mechanics, then you're in,
okay.
you're in business.
So mechanics are shortage. Right, this one. We've got another question. Whenever I turn on the news, I hear that the UK is being overrun by asylum seekers crossing the channel. But I've also read that the numbers are failing, and that the UK takes fewer refugees than many EU countries. What's the truth?
So asylum numbers technically are on the rise.
Okay.
We saw a 4% increase this year on last year. But overall, across the last few years, it's down.
Okay.
The number of cases that are sort of awaiting an initial decision is down by about 48%, I think.
This year?
Yes, this year. So there's...
so they're getting through the cases?
Yes. We had 111,000 applications for asylum this year. 110 got an initial decision, which reduced the backlog to 71,000.
Because there was a backlog obviously from the year before.
So, you know, the yearly statistics for asylum are always slightly skewed. Because when I say 111 and 110, you go, oh, there's only 1,000 cases outstanding. That's not bad. But there's 71 that are still awaiting it.
Yeah.
And about 40...
Because of the backlog, it's not just the number that
and
are
about
coming.
48% of those roughly get a decision within a year.
And are they being rejected or are they being accepted?
So the year to June 25, the overall rejection rate was 52%. So more than half are getting rejected.
Okay. But that's
less
still
than half are getting
50,000 or 55 roughly thousand asylum cases are being granted. Where do they then go?
So at that point, they effectively are allowed to work. So what you have to remember is when you claim asylum in this country, you're not allowed to work. Okay, so you are housed at government expense, either in hotels, social housing, etc. Once you get granted your asylum, you're allowed to work. So you would then be able to go and claim job seekers allowance, housing benefit, etc. Same as a British citizen would. Same as, you know, somebody in my status or your status. The idea is that those people who have got asylum here actually want to work, and they go and do the rubbish jobs that nobody else wants to do. So, you know, your bin men, your drain cleaners.
Careful, bin men might say it's not a rubbish job.
Right? So those jobs that we as British citizens don't think are pretty. You know, when you go and get your car washed down the road, you wouldn't want to stand there all day washing cars.
No.
Your asylum seekers do. They don't mind. It's work. It's money.
Yeah.
And it's a safe country. They want to help and give back to the nation that's helped them.
Right, well, that kind of wraps up our immigration episode of Is That Legal? If you've enjoyed this episode, then remember to click the thumbs up and subscribe. And of course, if there's questions that you have, please put them in the comment section below. That's all from me, Paul Britton, Britton & Time Solicitors, Is That Legal? And
Mitchell Potter, immigration solicitor, qualified for 3 years, practicing for 7.
thank you for listening.